Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melco's application team. We're doing our DesignShop Talk today to see what questions you might have and to get them answered. If you have questions while we're live, please type them in the comments. We're live on both YouTube and Facebook. Put them in the chat. Don't send them privately. I don't see those while we're live. I don't have access to that. So just type them in on the chat on the live. And if you see me looking off to the side, that's what I'm looking at, my other monitor. All right, let me make sure both platforms are up. There is YouTube, there is Facebook, so we are good to go. Awesome. All right, so I'll start off with the questions that were sent in ahead of time, and we'll go from there. So first question was, I want to do this, and I don't know how. So, well, I'm summarizing. I'm trying to do this. Can you show me how? How about that? All right, so let's open up DesignShop, and let's work on it. So that is a trapunto effect, right? So, or how you would do that. Let me go ahead and open up this just to show you. So I created it. All right, but now let's go ahead and generate that. So I'm going to start from a new file so we can do it from scratch. So the first thing I'm going to do is down under these select custom shapes, there's actually a fleur-de-lis. So I'm going to select it, drag it and drop it up there, and let's make it a little bit bigger. I don't know, let's go like that. All right, so I got a fleur-de-lis, cute. Now I'm going to use my complex fill tool and my circle, and I'm going to draw an oval. So left click, left click. If I hold my shift key, it locks it to a circle. I don't want to, I want an oval. So I want it like that. And I'm going to move that to the back. And let's just, I'm eyeballing, which is good enough. So, all right, I changed my mind for eyeballing. There we go. Okay, so I've got a basic shape. Now, how do I turn that into that trapunto look? So first off, I got to subtract. I don't want to fill, right? So what this is like sewing the inverse, so your negative is what's popping through. So I don't want this to be a fill. I want to subtract this stuff out of it. So how you would do that is you select the element that you want to subtract from first. Okay, I'm going to hold my control key down and select color 2. So that selects that entire fleur-de-lis. Right here you'll see there's subtract elements. Before I click that, I'm going to right click on it and make sure my overlap is set to 0 because we want a 1-to-1 subtraction. So in that case, now I just hit subtract and I can now delete my fleur-de-lis. Okay. So now I've got that cut out of my shape. Okay, so that's part one. Now the next thing is for that trapunto type effect, it's not a solid fill like this, right? It's closer to what you would see on your primer stitches. So we're going to modify this and just turn it into that kind of open fill. And I'll show you some other fun stuff you can do with it as well. So if you select your shape, we're going to go into the properties now. And under our properties, first thing I'm going to do is pick something big for the density. All right, so I'm going to say 40. I'm going to turn on trapunto and trace border because that cleans up these edges so it's nice and clean. And while that would work, let's go into the underlay and deal with that. So I'm going to turn off the secondary underlay. Notice how the underlay comes close to the edge but not to the edge. That's because of this border margin. So I'm going to set that to 0. Okay, so if you want the diamond look, there you got it. But I want squares. So I'm going to change that to the same density that I had over here. So whatever number I have here, I'm going to put right here. And then if you don't want a diamond look, you want a square, you would change that to 90 degrees. Okay, so there you go. There you have it. So that would sew out, leaving your towel popping through here and tap down all the other loops around there. Now some other things you can play with is rather than doing kind of this primer type stitch, you can come over here and try decorative stitches. Okay, so if you want to add a little more interest to it, you can try these different decorative stitches. It'll still give you that same effect of sewing it down, but instead of in that crosshatch pattern, now you can give it, you know, different patterns. And there's a bunch in here. You can create your own. But there's a lot of them. Okay, so it's pretty much that simple. Now, what if you didn't have that shape to subtract, right? So I'm going to copy and paste that in as a fill. And from here, I'm going to delete the whole. All right, so let's say you didn't have a shape to subtract, or you're just going to draw your own little thing. What you can always do is select your shape. Right here is insert a hole. And now you can draw whatever it is you want to subtract out of here. All right, so I've got my super ugly shape. So if you don't hit a million keys on the keyboard, that would be helpful too. So you can draw whatever shape you want using this hole tool right there. Okay, but it's pretty much that simple. You draw your shape, you change the properties of that fill, and then add whatever holes. I did the hole first, just using a shape because we had it. Thank you. Let's see, where'd it go? There it is. All right, so I can come over to this guy and add additional holes if I want. So let's say I want a circle. I can add holes that way, or I can draw my own. If you don't like it, remember you can always, to delete the shapes, select the shape, select the hole, hit delete, and then it will recalculate it. So you can change that to decorative, and it will do a decorative fill. All right, so that will give you this look. All right, so this trapunto reverse, where basically you're sewing in behind and letting the loops of the fabric come through. You can do that with lettering too. So let's say you want a monogram. That's what I've used it for the most personally. Where's my design shop? There she is. Okay, so let's change that back to a fill. Cool. I'm going to delete that hole. What would be my monogram? SMT. There we go. And let's make that one bigger. Let's move that one over. All right. Not the prettiest thing here, but gives you, all I'm doing for this is creating me some art to subtract, right? So I can take my shape that I want to subtract from, then select the lettering, click on my subtract, and now I can delete that lettering, and I've got my reverse thing here. I can change that to a decorative. And my decorative pattern, the angles are weird, but that's okay. Or I can change it to that fill, hearts, you know, whatever you want to do in here, you can change it to. I'm trying to think what are some good ones. The leaves are cute. Anyway, that's cute. All right, so it gives you some ideas for doing that trapunto look. All right, I know you can do marrow edges for patches, but can you do it on a custom patch that's not included with the software? Absolutely. So where's Design Shop? There it is. All right, let's just do a new file. All right, so what shape do we want? Why don't we do that? Let's say we want it in the shape of a house. So I add a point. So let's say that's the shape of our patch for whatever reason. All right, so how do I make it a trapunto border for that? Well, I can go hold my shift key down and say walk input method. All right, so that shift and click adds a walk. I'm going to turn off the fill for the moment. So from here, I can come up and change it to decorative. And under decorative, there are these faux patch borders. And that's facing the right way. Yeah. So all I would need to do at this point is just address the edges so that they're a little cleaner. See that? So that they rotate around a little bit better. But you can do this for any shape. I don't like what I just did there. Let's delete that. So here I would split the shape. Split. There it is. Much better. That edge looks good. They all look good now. So yeah, that would be a foam arrow border using a custom shape. So all that is a decorative stitch selecting the faux patch borders as your pattern. So even if I drew it rather than creating the shape first, I could go decorative, come down here, select the faux patch, and I could draw it. Okay. And if you notice, if at whatever point it's facing the wrong way, so the chain stitch is on the outside, there's another one here that switches the direction of it. Okay, so you've got two faux patch borders. One has it on one side, the other has it on the other. So if you draw it and realize it's the wrong one, just come up here to your pattern, select the one above or below whatever you selected. Okay, so yeah, you can absolutely create whatever shape you want using that. All right, I don't see any questions typed in so far, so I'm going to keep going. How to stitch a batch. Okay, you missed how to, someone just typed in, they missed how to split the shape to fix the corner. Okay, so where's Design Shop? Let's go back, and then I'll do the next one. Let's undo. There. Okay, so I undo one more. I didn't like that corner right there. So I came down here, selected the point by left clicking on it. You can't tell that it's actually selected because of that red thing, so I moved it. So I selected the point, and then right here, it's usually that showing. If you hold that button down, there's split element at selected point, and that's move. That's selected now, and then you can just move it around. And there, it's all fixed. So you just split the point at selected point. So that's, again, not that I want to, but if I want to split it there, I would then click on that guy right there, split element at selected point. Okay, awesome. All right, what other question? What was I doing? Oh, batch patches. So how do you set up a large batch of patches? Okay, new file, let's get a big hoop. That is certainly not a big hoop. So how do we change the hoop size? All right, so if right here displays the hoop, if you right click on it, it'll bring up all your hoop selections. I'm gonna change it to the 11 by 17 because I love that hoop. And why not? All right, so let's draw a patch. Well, I guess I can use I just drew this one, so why don't we use our house? All right. I'm gonna add some text to it so we have stuff to move around. So let's turn this into an actual patch of sorts anyway. All right, so if I were doing this as a patch, I personally prefer to eliminate sewing when possible and use fabric instead. So why don't we do this as if it were a fabric. So I'm going to put a applique down of fabric instead of this fill. So just making me a shape. That'll do. Okay, so I'm going to take that shape, convert it over. So shift and click adds a shape, control and click converts it. So control, click on that. Now I've got a walk. So now I can copy paste, turn that into a different color and a bean stitch. And then I can copy paste, turn that into, oops, control, click on this guy here and turn that into a tackle of, I don't know, 30. That'll do. And give that a different color. Okay, so now I have a patch. I've got my placement, my tack down. I then trim it, hold the fabric down, do my lettering and my border. That finishes it up. Okay, so I'm going to copy that whole thing and let's go back to my big patch file, paste. Whoa, that's a really big, ugly house. Let's make it smaller. Okay, and that still needs to be bigger. Lovely. All right, so if you want to make this into an array of patches, so you can do it a few different ways. You can copy and paste it around and move things. You can come over to, where is it? Tool, Object, Step and Repeat. And let's say we want 3 columns might fit 2 rows with point a 1/4 inch between. Let's see how that looks. Preview. That'll do. All right. So I've got a whole bunch. Now, if you look at it, it's sewing these one at a time, which isn't exactly, so that's going to give you the best sew out, right? If you finish as you go, you're going to have your best sew out. When you're doing big bulk batches like this, you've got to pay attention to how well you hoop it, what materials you're using. Are you going to have a lot of shift as it sews? And there's no magic where I can tell you, look at this, and that's how you do it. Because it really depends on your design, and that comes with experience of knowing how much of that you're going to have. Okay, so I tend to, when I'm doing big hoops, I tend to do in batches, in groups that are close together. So if this whole hoop was full of, let's say, 12 rounds, I would do a corner and then another corner and another corner and another corner, so that I don't have large motion. Because if I did everything at once and then I came back and sewed everything at once, that would end up causing potential shifts, right? And your first ones will look great. By the time it gets all the way to the other end of the hoop, it's going to be goofed up. All right. So you're going to lose registration because of materials moving around. John, you're funny. So how I would do this, I've got 6 of them, so I probably would do 2, 2, and 2 personally. So how do you do that? Well, first I got to figure out where they are. Okay, so this one is down here, and then all right. So first off, I'm just going to move this up so I don't have to keep on scrolling back and forth. Is it moved now? That one and that one. Yes. All right. So now I'm just going to group my colors. It's really that simple. I'm going to grab each color, move them together. My pink one and my text then next. And then my blue. And then you can tell it to combine colors there. Turn that off. So there's my placement for those two. My tack down for those fabrics. The place, what holds it down, the embroidery, and then the finish stitching. So I created all these at once, but if I'm just going to do these 2 together, I'll tell you honestly, this is what I would do. Rather than sorting all the rest, I would just delete those, copy paste, and move it over. Copy paste, move it over. That's how I would set this one up. And then delete all these because now they're useless. Delete, delete, and delete. There. So now it's going to sew 2, 2, and 2. Now, if, like I said, if you've got a whole bunch of them and you know you've got a material that's not going to move around a lot and things like that, you can do center out will give you the best results. All right. So if I'm going to sew these all at once, my material's great. I would sew these 2 first, then these 2, then those 2. So it's going center out to give me the best possibility of not having a lot of push in there. Okay. So hopefully that helps some, but it's just a sorting exercise and thinking about it, of how you want to do it. Like I said, in big hoops like this, I personally tend to do it by quadrant. So I'd sew all the patches in this quadrant, then this quadrant, then this quadrant, then this quadrant, and that, you know, something like that. And then I'd take them all, cut them out, and call it done. Okay. No. I don't want to save that. Nope, because it's ugly. All right. Let's see. What else do we have? When copying and pasting a design, why does it load thread colors in reverse order? To drive me crazy? No. So it's a bug. It is the newer versions. So there's going to be a service pack that comes out. I don't know when, but soonish, I assume. They're working on it. So I can't make it do it in the beta testing of that. So I'm pretty sure it's been addressed. I've noticed that things you can do with that. If you paste it in and they go reverse, if you move the design, so just click copy paste. When it all pastes in, left click drag and then hit undo, Control Z. Magically, most of the time that will rearrange it into the correct order for me. Do I know why? No. I wish I did, because then I'd make it not do it. But the other thing I've noticed is when there's vectors copied with the designs, it tends to put the stuff in weird orders more frequently than if you just copy and paste digitized elements. So if you ever have vectors with it, that'll cause it to occasionally flop the colors around. But my favorite trick is copy paste. It goes in the wrong order. I left click and drag and then hit undo, and then it's all magically how I want it. So, but the next versions, I can't make it do that. We have a question typed in. Is it better to make a patch on plastic and punch it out, or with fabric and burn the edges? What makes one better than the other? I think it's personal preference, quite frankly. I shake. So using a hot knife for me is not feasible, because I don't have very steady hands on there. So I end up getting mad. So for me, the hot knife is not something that I can tolerate using. Now, so I do them all in plastic and punch them out. I did do some things where I actually set up on my laser to cut it out, which is the same as a hot knife. It's just mechanical. That worked pretty well, but for me, it's just so much quicker to pop them out of plastic and be done with it. But I know many shops that are like, hot knife, hot knife, hot knife, and they are magical with that thing. I've watched them and I'm going, I couldn't even attempt that. I would either burn myself or cut a hole through the patch because I shake. So what makes one better than the other? I think the hot knife, to some degree, the edges look a little bit cleaner. But if you take a heat gun and burn the little plastic pokies that stick out when you punch it out, then to me they look the same. So what's a good plastic to use? There's a bunch of options. I'll say I personally go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy 6mm painter's plastic, the drop cloths, the 6mm, and that's what I use. It's great. It's cheap. You can use Badge Master. That washes away and it doesn't stay. Another really good one is it's vinyl, 12 gauge vinyl. That it's clear vinyl that you'd find at restaurants when you go in sometimes have a plastic cover. It's that material. It's actually a 12 gauge plastic vinyl, clear. You can find it at Joann's. You can find it online. So you can use that. I don't use it because it's more expensive. So I just use the Home Depot or Lowe's 6mm plastic. I usually double it up because stitch heavy things, I'd rather have too much than not enough. But that's what I use. It works great. 2 layers of 6mm plastic, you're good to go. I had a customer once using bags that the shirts came in. So when they would unbag shirts, they would hoop those bags and use that. It worked, and it was a reuse item, so that was cool. But I just use the Lowe's or Home Depot material and call it done. Okay. Well, let's see. Anyone others typed in? Did I miss? No. Okay. What types of stitches would give it more of a hand look? Okay. So hand look stuff is a lot of fun, and I've noticed it comes down to adding irregularities to your designs mostly. So you can use a bean stitch. All right. So I can take a walk stitch, turn that into a bean, and then use like a bean of 5, or better yet, use a bean of 3 with a retrace, and then I can double click on that, and under here I can add an offset. Okay, so I did that really fast, but what does all that mean? All right, so I drew a line, line, bean, and the thickness of 3. All right, so that was step 1. You set it to bean. The bean thickness is how many times it's going to go over itself. So how many pieces of thread are going to be left at each stitch. So a bean of 3 means your machine, when it's sewing, is going to waltz. It's going to go 1, 2, forward, back, forward. So that left 3 pieces of thread. Forward, back, forward. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So your machine waltzes as it's sewing. All right, putting 3 pieces of thread down. Now, if you turn on the retrace button, what does that do? That means it's going to sew 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 all the way to the end of the line that you drew, and then it's going to go back over itself. So it's going to start and end in the same spot, meaning it goes out with 3 pieces of thread, it comes back with 3 pieces of thread. Your net result is you have 6. Okay? All right, so what does this offset do? So a bead stitch, there. This one already has an offset on it. So when it goes out, it puts the holes in the same spot. So it makes a jump, stitch, back, forward. So if I were to do that with manual, just so you could see it, it's going to stitch here, it's going to stitch there, it's going to come back to that same spot, stitch, stitch. So that's my 3 stitches. That's my 3 pieces of thread. Then it's going to go forward, back, forward in the same holes. Okay, when you add an offset, as it comes back, it's going to stagger my needle locations. Why would you want to do that? It's so it doesn't go in the same spots. So if it went out 1, 2, that's a piece of thread, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, so if that's how it went out, when it comes back, it's going to stagger it. So it might go here, 1, 2, 3. All right, so it's not going to go in the same holes that it went out on. And why is that relevant? Well, what that's going to do is it's going to make it look a little bit bolder, right? And it's going to cover up some of those needle penetrations. So the offset can make it look more hand done, because now it's not going in the same spot, and it looks, while the 3 stitches are overlapped, now it's overlapping one another. Okay, so the offset's a good tool to have. Now, what's another way we can add some irregularities to make it look more hand done? Well, you can use the decorative stitches, and you've got a decorative chain stitch, which if you use that one, you'll see it's pretty huge. So that's really big, but that's cool. What can you do with that? Well, I can come over here in the properties of that chain stitch and go, okay, play with the numbers, see what it does. So I liked the length of that. Ooh, I don't want 10. Don't do that. I like 100, but let's make it narrower. So let's make it like 50 wide. Okay, so that can give you a more hand look. You can create your own decoratives. So I'll create one in a moment for you, but just to give you some ideas. So here's another one. That was one that was created. This was a decorative created kind of like a little diamond, again, to make it look more hand look. You can do another chain B. You can see I do a bunch of these. So I tried different ones. Well, this is the one I'll show you, is decorative. I think I called it test 1. And then we'll go create it so you can see it. So that's the one I really liked. Okay, that kind of staggers that bean stitch. So this is basically a staggered bean stitch to give that hand look to it. Okay, so how do we create that on your own? All right, so file. Okay, so this right here is the shape I drew to create that. When you're creating your own decorative stitches, you always need to make sure your start and stop are on the same horizontal line. So I just use the origin of this, which is this guy right here, as a reference. Do you have to use that? No, it's just where I put it. All right, so to create that, did a manual stitch. Okay, start. When I went up a little bit because I don't want it on the same line, because that's what a bean stitch does. So I wanted to stagger it up, back a little bit, and then there. Okay, so once you have your manual stitch, we don't want any of these knots just for what we're doing here. Okay, so I've got my manual stitch. You then select your manual stitch that you create, right click, save custom shape, give it a name, test. I always save as test until I like it. And once I like it, then I save as my final, whatever you want to call it. That way I don't junk up my entire area with a million of the same thing. So, decorative, test, where's my test? QRST. Draw it, see if that worked. Yeah, it's not bad. All right, so there is my decorative stitch. So once you create all these decoratives, if you're like me and you've got multiple computers, or let's say you install them separate, how do you find them? All right, let's go get them. All right, so wherever you installed DesignShop, typically it's on your C drive, x86, somewhere under Milko. What version am I working in here? I think it's this one. It's the released version. And then under symbols, decoratives, there they are. Let's see, did I just save test there? Yeah, so these are the ones I've been playing with. All right, so you can grab all the ones you create, copy them, and then paste them back into that same file on the new computer or in wherever this decorative folder is. So rather than having to recreate them, I save out all my decoratives that I like into a library folder, so that when I go to when I have a new computer and whatnot, so I paste them here, and that way anytime I go to a new computer, I can copy this decorative folder over into the new installation, and that way all my fun stuff is still there. So that's just what I do. I keep my own little library together of all my symbols, my decoratives, my custom designs and whatnot. That way when I install again, I can copy them over and they'll be there. Cool. All right, what else? Let's see. All right, so the next one was, oh, yes. I want a simple flower petal to replicate around a circle. What's the easiest way to do that? I would do it with the decorative stitch myself. So just like what we created, you'd digitize one petal or two. So if they're going to be end to end, you would digitize two, or whatever the repeating pattern is, and then you'd save off the custom shape. So the same way we did that little zigzag, you would just create your flower petal. That's how I would do it, because then you just take your shape, change it to the decorative, to your flower petal, and you're done. It'll put it around there. If you need to adjust the spacing, you can go into the properties of that and change those spacing properties. So that is the easiest way, in my opinion, because otherwise you're going to move them around, copy, paste, rotate, move, move things all over the place, and that gets old fast. So I would just create a decorative. How do you outline using two color freshman type? So also showing how to kern type. Okay, I think are you wanting to outline OTF like a computer font and kern a computer font? Is that what you're wanting to do, Richard? Let me know. I'm going to assume so. Okay. All right. I'm going to close that. Close that. New. All right, new file. So I think what you're asking is how you take a computer font. Let's use Lato. It's one of the Google fonts. I'm going to take that one. All right. Text. Okay. So if you double click on the text, your kerning is under spacing. So you can either auto kern there. If you don't, and then you can adjust the kerning. Let's say you want them further apart. You can set it that way. Let's say you don't like the auto kerning. that's okay too. You can come over to letters, and in between, let's say I just want to move the T over. So I can go between the T and the E, and I'm going to really exaggerate this. It's going to break it, but so you can see I can push one way, or I can go, okay, move all that closer to the T that way. Okay, so you can kern that way. I prefer to use it here rather than adjusting it manually. Another way you can manually kern is select the text, select the X of the letter, and then drag it around. Okay, I don't like doing that because when you go modify the text, the kerning doesn't hold and you've got to go do it again. All right, so this is a computer generated font. Ways you can do borders. You can tell it to do auto borders, and you tell it how wide you want it, and it'll put a border on it. That's one way. Another would be to take your text, hold your shift key down, and click on single line, and it'll put a border there. If you do these, I usually do them first and then the text, and to make them wider, and then put the text on top. I like that. So I've got a nice wide outline, and then the lettering goes on top of it. Okay, so those are the two ways you can take a standard computer font and add borders to it, right? So I can take the text, go into properties, and turn on auto borders, and then adjust the stuff here. Or you can do it this way. Add your outlines and then rearrange them. Now keep in mind, if you do what I just did here, that says all the outlines and then the text, that can be a dangerous proposition. Typically you want to do the border for T and then the T, the border for E, then the E. Why? Because you always want to finish as you go. The more you get away from it, the larger the thing you sew, when you come back, stuff is going to have shifted. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So this might be, if I still want this look of sewing that first and then the lettering, I probably would want to split up the text and arrange it so I could do border letter, border letter, border letter, border letter. Okay. Richard, did that help any? Hopefully. Let me know. While you're typing that, I have instances where my Melco OS doesn't connect and says something about not being authorized, and I can't connect to, am I doing... Okay, not being authorized, I don't know. So I know if there's a license issue, you might have to have the license reset. The best thing I would suggest is when that comes up, either get some steps together and send it over to service@melco.com with some screenshots, or give them a call and so they can look at it, because I'm trying to think of any scenarios that I could force that, and I can't think of any. They all just connect. So what I would suggest is to, write down the steps you did. I did A, B, C, put it into an email, send it over to service@melco.com with the screenshots, and then you can give them a call. They can log into your computer, look at the email, that sort of thing, and try to figure out what's going on for you. That would be my suggestion. Okay, let's see. Nothing else there, so I'm going to come back to what was I supposed to be going over? Okay, we talked about that. Oh, this one. Someone found my cell phone number and texted me. So let's see what we got for this one. All right, so this one, basically, they have a font, and they were saying, when I copy them, I don't like how the particular letters sew, so I want to paste in a different font into that. And then it tells me characters not recognized, and it won't do it, which that's correct, because first let me show you that. Let's see if I can force it. It usually works when I gotta find some text to copy that has an apostrophe in it. That one. All right, so I'm going to copy something from Facebook and hope that it breaks so I can show you the issue. Okay, so if I do text, I'm going to change that to one of them, let's say block 2. paste. You get this error. The following characters are not part of this alphabet. They will be removed. It's the apostrophe. Okay. It'll tell you what characters. So you notice the apostrophe's gone. And that's because this particular font did not have that particular apostrophe digitized. Okay. So you can't just take another font, computer font, paste it into here and expect it to work because it wasn't digitized, right? So fixing this one's easy. All you got to do is come over and select the apostrophe, type in the one associated with the font. Voila, that fixed that. However, the specific question was, well, I don't like how a particular letter shows in that font and I want to redigitize, the letter A or whatever letter it was. Okay, so how do I do that? So what I would suggest is you can modify the font here by going into let's see, right click, mode. I can go into expanded editing or wireframe editing and I can modify that font. But rather than doing that, what I would suggest is taking the font, copying it, and creating a new one, right? So if I go over to, again, where everything's installed, where are my fonts? Alphabets. So let's take the block 2 OFA. I'm going to copy it and paste it. Did I do it? Yes. All right, I'm going to call it not that. Well, I guess I could. Whatever, close enough. All right, usually you have to restart for it to regenerate the previews. It should come up with an error saying, hey, you have new fonts or something of that nature. Where did it go? All right. Hang on. Apparently my computer's deciding to close on me. There it goes. Sorry. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the alphabet editor and tool, maybe, there we go, tools, alphabet editor. Oh, there's the brush script. Custom, there's the block 2 copy. Okay, so I'm going to grab that one. And then you go over here, you find which letter you don't like. And now all the wireframes are here and you can modify, change the shape, whatever you want it to do. You do it right there. Okay. And that's all there is to it. So it will automatically save. The alphabet editor automatically saves, which is why I suggest you copy these so you're not overwriting the original font. But you can go click on whatever character you don't like or that you want to modify and redigitize that letter. And now you would have your own software. Okay, your own font that's custom. And you can do whatever you want to it. You've got all these columns. You can change the shape. You can whatever you need to do. What about not seeing my open in UI? What do you mean not seeing your open in UI, the user interface? You're not seeing how to load files? It's not connected to the machine? That's usually an Ethernet thing. So if it's not connected to the machine, so you got that big question mark on it in your UI, you may want to have someone look at your Ethernet settings on the adapter to make sure it's not accidentally. Windows has some power management things where it will actually put the Ethernet cards to sleep when it thinks they're not being used, and then they don't wake up for the OS. So you want to turn that power management feature off of the Ethernet card. So if your periodically turning on the OS and you see that question mark, and it usually connects, but it's not. It just might be a power management issue associated with your Windows setup. Okay, and we did get you a link on that. Okay. What other questions do we have? All right, so I showed you how to copy the font, how to reopen it, select the font, and then you just find the character you want to modify. And if you want to add a character, you can also add new characters here. So if something was not digitized, oh, your Ethernet card is not in the list. Okay, that's a Windows thing. It means it's not being recognized by Windows because all the... Anyway, give the service department a call and they can help you sort that. Okay, so... Yeah, because I don't have OS here to be able to navigate through that for you. On this computer anyway. Okay. Let's see. What else? All right, so that's how you modify letters of a font. Okay. Awesome. All right, what other questions do you guys have? Because that's all I had. Which, we've talked for 50 minutes. That's awesome. Okay. Anything else? Well, I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend. I'm trying to think this weekend. I'm just wasting time to see if there's any questions typed in. I'm going to go row. I have a regatta next weekend that it's going to be the first race I've actually been in, so that should be fun. So, since my injury anyway. So I'm going to go stroke the 4, which means I'm the lead, the front of the boat. Front of the rowboat, and the other people follow along and hope I don't die. So that should be fun. So we got practices this weekend, and that's about it. And then back to sewing next week until regatta time. You guys have a fantastic weekend. I will be back next week. Hope these are helpful. Let us know what you want to learn about, and we will see how we can get that answered. Have a fabulous weekend, everyone. Bye all.